Namo Narayan, courageous yogis. In this talk, I want to share with you an introduction to Antar Mouna and the objective here in what is really a very scientific approach to meditation. A non-dogmatic, doesn't require any blind faith or for you to subscribe to any kind of religious dogmatic ideas or anything. It just is a technique that you can do in 6 stages. But before we go into that, I'm here underneath a peepal tree, which is native to India and is also the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, is a peepal tree. And I named this tree Ganesha. Can you see why? I was staring up at this tree during meditation one time, during Yoga Nidra, and suddenly I saw Ganesha everywhere. Ganeshas in all the leaves of this tree. Here's the ears, and you see the trunk coming down? Lord Ganesh. Okay, Antar Mouna. Antar Mouna is a systematic method of learning meditation. Most of us just launch right into trying to meditate, and that's the mistake. We oftentimes find just the mind overwhelms us, and we leave our meditation maybe even more frustrated than when we came to meditate. And this is discouraging and makes us want to meditate less. Well, that stage that most of us just try to go right into when we meditate without learning anything first, that's actually stage 5 out of the 6 stages of Antar Mouna. And we have 4 stages before that. We have 4 stages to really prepare the mind for meditation. So by this point, you should have already prepared your body and the pranamaya kosha, the breath, by doing some asana and pranayam. And then this is pratyahara and dharana. Dharana is stage 6 of Antar Mouna. All the first 5 stages are pratyahara, preparation for meditation, sensory withdrawal. And without this, you could only meditate if you live the type of life where you have no stress, no tensions, and no desires. If you can sit down and you have no desires, no tension, no stress, you can meditate spontaneously. But for most of us, we have to learn how to manage the mind first. So that's what this whole process is. And there's 6 stages, so let's go through each one. And we can understand, if you know a little bit about the 5 koshas and also the 3 bodies, then we can understand how each stage fits into the 5 koshas and the 3 bodies. So first stage is listening to sounds. We externalize our awareness to the sensory perceptions. And this externalizing of our awareness to the sensory perceptions is a form of pratyahara, sensory withdrawal. It doesn't seem like it would be, right? Sensory withdrawal seems like we're moving our awareness within. But here, by listening to sounds acutely and intently, you must silence your mind in order to listen to anything, in order to pay attention to a lecture, in order to read a book, in order to actually enjoy and watch a movie. The mind must become silent. So by listening to sounds, it is a way to silence your mind. And to prepare for meditation, you're interrupting whatever thought patterns were occurring before you sat for meditation. Right? You're clearing the mind on that initial level of the gross conscious mind and the dialoguing of the mind. And you do that for as long as you can. And it's also a beautiful meditation. Stage 1 is a complete meditation form in and of itself. You could just stay with stage 1 because you do learn how to become more silent, to silence the mind. You develop more of that inner silence, Antar Mouna. And you also develop concentration and presence. Because since you're listening to the sounds are happening in this present moment only. So by listening to sound, you are totally immersing yourself in this present moment. And as your concentration builds up, having that concentrated presence is meditation. So you can use that, just stage 1, as a meditation practice. And it's recommended that you do in the beginning. That's why it's stage 1. So you stay with this for a while until the thoughts start to inundate you. And at first, when you're doing just listening to sounds in stage 1, it's easy in the beginning to have this concentrated presence because you're doing something new. You just sat down for meditation and you're like, okay, here we go. And you're able to just listen, preferring to listen over preferring to think. But eventually the thought forms just start bombarding you, and they come back in with so much force that we cannot ignore them anymore. And at that point, you are now naturally in stage 2 of Antar Mouna, in which you start to let any thought arise spontaneously. You just observe all spontaneous thoughts. You can think of it as going from listening to outer sounds to now listening to inner sounds. Going from that level of Vaikari to Madhyama. Or you could, if you're more visually oriented, then you can just start to witness the screen of Chittakash, the screen of the psyche, the mental space, and just start to see whatever visions arise there and let everything arise naturally. Let all pent-up emotions out. Level 2 here, this is like you're letting off steam. It's like the valve of the mind. When you're letting off the pressure, it's that surface level pressure of obsessive thoughts, repetitive thoughts, habitual thoughts, and the emotions, the habitual emotions. Emotions are very addictive chemicals. All that stuff that's on the surface level. When you open the valve to the psyche during stage 2, then you let it all come out. And this is also where we start to begin Sakshibhav, witness consciousness. In order to do stage 2 correctly, you must disidentify, disassociate from the mind. So it's not my thoughts, it's not my emotions. They're just thoughts. They're just emotions. And by having that witness consciousness, you can allow it all to come up. And when you let it all come up and you can face the tension that's within you, instead of just trying to suppress it, when you can finally allow yourself to face whatever physical, emotional, mental, or psychological tension or stress that's within you, then it's a therapeutic process of inner psychological purification. Because it takes a certain amount of prana, of energy, to keep all thoughts, all samskaras, all emotions, all memories, to keep it suppressed. It takes a tremendous amount of energy, prana. And when we can let that come up, just while observing it like you're watching a movie, when you can just let it all come up and disidentify from it, and just let it express itself, then it gets the energy out. And you might even give yourself permission to laugh or to cry, just so that you can vent that energy. And when that energy comes out fully like that, and you're not grasping onto it and trying to, that's why it's important not to judge yourself, not to analyze. There's no psychoanalysis happening here. There's no trying to derive some personal meaning. What does this all say about me kind of thoughts? No. Just have that witness consciousness that you're watching something that's like somebody else's performance. You're just observing it without any attachment. And when you can let everything within you come up like that, the energy expresses itself. It has a chance to come out and to reveal itself, come to surface and bubble up and burst. And now that energy has been disinvested. It loses its emotional charge. When it loses its pranic investment, when there's no more prana there, the memory will still be there, right? You're not erasing memories in this process. It's just that now it's a memory without prana to it. So it's lost its momentum in the psyche, and it's not influencing your psychological, subconscious, emotional, and physical behavior. It's that energy is now free. and you can move it elsewhere. You can just use that for rejuvenation, revitalization, overtaxed muscle tissues and limbs and bones and joints and muscles, as well as just having a more abundance of free energy for self-expression and for higher awareness. Because for higher awareness, we must have high energy. This is just stage 2. You can see why we approach this as a full 6-week-long course in the workshops on Tripura Yoga, because we give a week to each of these, and we may be extending it. I'm thinking about making a level 1, level 2, level 3, where we'll be learning this over the course of like 6 months, which would be more proper. You should really give 1 month to each stage, ideally. Next comes stage 3, in which you create the images. You create the movies in your mind. Instead of just passively watching anything that comes up, you start to consciously create thoughts. And you can choose a theme and meditate on that theme. You can choose an issue that is bound to conjure up all sorts of thoughts and emotional reactions along with it. An issue in the world. And the purpose here is not to just create nice mental inner scenery. That's not the purpose. The purpose here is to prod and poke the depths of the psyche, the shadows of the psyche, and to see what comes up. So we are here trying to really purify. And for this process, Sakshi Bhav, witness consciousness, must be strong. You must be able to dissociate yourself from whatever thoughts and feelings come up. Otherwise, it can just create more tension if we're trying to identify with it. But we start to dissociate from our mind, our thoughts, our feelings, the senses. Yes, I have a body, but I am not just my body. My body is subject to change. It is impermanent, therefore it cannot be the real me. My emotions as well, the senses as well, my thoughts as well. These are all subject to change, but there's always been that inner me. That's always been me, the inner observer, the inner experiencer, beyond the thoughts. It's always been me my whole life. So anything subject to change cannot be me. When we can remain focused in that higher awareness, then anything that comes up, then we can observe it from a third-party, detached perspective, and through that, purify our mind. Because whatever comes up, it's a part of you. So you choose a topic, maybe a controversial topic that's surfacing in the media or in the world or whatever. You choose a topic, and now instead of just engaging with it from the first-person dialogue of the mind, like you're choosing sides, instead, you just create a sequence of images. If you can think in movies, like if you have a really creative visualization or imagination, then you can actually create movies in your mind of this and things, scenes playing out. What's the worst case possible scenario? Try to see it from somebody else's perspective. Even try to see it from the opposite perspective as yours. Really, this will also open your heart up as well. It's a purifying process. Detaching from the ego, detaching from our limited personal perspective, which is different to everybody, and going beyond the limitations of the individual mind. That's, we're working on that level of awareness, that high awareness. And so here you're creating these images or these movies in your mind consciously, making sure not to get sidetracked. You don't want to think about any mundane thoughts. All of a sudden thoughts come in about the laundry or something like that. No, you just have to keep it all on track. And what this does is two things. First of all, in stage 3, we are choosing more disturbing themes. And you only do 3. Okay, you choose a theme, let it play out in your mind completely until either it's played out, or if it becomes too intense, then you can just stop. And it's important that you are able to stop when you want to stop. It's very important that you can just delete that train of thought. Therefore, I suggest that you start with simple ones, easy ones. Don't go to whatever's bothering you the most or whatever's causing you the most inner strife and inner turmoil. Start with a thought form that is mediocre. That's a normal emotion that you're used to feeling in your life. Maybe there's just something you're frustrated about, but it doesn't get to you that much, right? And this is like learning how to swim. We don't want to just jump into the deep end. First, you want to, when you're going into the ocean, you walk up to your ankles. And then when you feel comfortable, you go into your hips. And if things are still working out, there's not a strong undertow, you're not going to risk getting pulled out by some current, then you go a little bit deeper and you start swimming around when you're up to your chest or up to your waist. And then when you're strong, then you're like, okay, I can go out into the deep waves, and if there's a current, I can swim sideways, get out of it. I'm a strong swimmer now. This is the approach we want to have with Antar Mouna, because the emotions are the undercurrents, and there can be some really powerful samskaras, latent impressions that are stored in the depths of the psyche that you might have totally forgotten about. Feelings from when you were a kid just all of a sudden comes up. And that's what we deal with particularly in stage 4. But in stage 3, you are choosing these themes to play out in your mind and trying to provoke a reaction from within yourself, starting with gentle emotions, and then as you build up that sakshi bhav, that ability to remain a witness, then you can go for more provocative thoughts during stage 3. And this is purifying you. As long as you can stay detached and have that distance, because you can be aware of your mind, that means you're not your mind. There's a higher intelligence beyond the mind. And that awareness, pure awareness, devoid of any thought, any analysis, any judgment, that pure awareness is what we're trying to develop here in this practice. It's like a mental muscle, and it's a prerequisite. We must have that in order to go into the advanced stages of the practice. So next, you do 3 times, and in between you go to Chittakash. Chittakash is just the inner space, the mental space in front of your closed eyes, the screen of the psyche, and you just watch whatever comes up. Usually in the beginning, it's just like shapes and random objects, might look like cartoon-like kinds of visions come up, or just colors and patterns. Eventually, however, you start to actually see more vivid mental visions within Chittakash. So between those 3 themes, you are resting in Chittakash for a minute or so, 30 seconds to a minute. And then you choose your next provocative theme. And after 3, you stop. And you go to stage 4. In stage 4, we go back to just spontaneous thought awareness. Just awareness to whatever is surfacing on the mind. However, here, there's a particular emphasis on developing awareness to deep-seated samskaras that now start to come to surface. And it's here at this stage that we do the deep psychological purification. So it's like when you have a murky glass of water and you only clear the top half. If you could do that somehow, if you could only make the top half of a murky glass of water clean and clear, then the sediment from the bottom half is going to slowly come up. Right? Does that make sense? It's going to want to go, because it's thicker down here and thinner up here. So it's going to go, and the murk is going to start coming up into that water that you've already made clear. This is the stage 4, where you become aware to samskaras and thoughts and have tremendous gravity. And that's the best way I can explain it, because if you understand how the samskaras work, first there's an experience, and then if you're in this mode of identifying with your body, mind, and ego, then you relate to that experience. You say, I like it, or I don't like it. This is according to me. This is not according to me. You're making everything personal. You're making yourself the center of all experience. In this mode where we are not aware of the Atma, we are identifying as being the body. In this mode of ignorance, when an occurrence happens, we try to relate to it. We're projecting our identity onto it. And we say, I like it or I don't like it. Then a desire is formed. either attraction or aversion. Either we're moving towards or moving away. And this is the initial momentum that starts in the mind. And the thoughts are all orbiting around that desire. All thoughts are meant to engage the body in order to fulfill a desire. That's the purpose of thought. All thoughts are ultimately trying to engage the body in order to fulfill a desire. And when we then act, that is karma. Karma literally means action. And it gets the name in this whole process. Instead of calling samskaras or vasanas or vrittis this process, we call this whole process karma. Because karma, action, is what makes it cyclical. Because when you act, now you're bringing another experience. And that new experience reinforces the original samskara. Reinforces the initial impression from the first time you experienced that. And now it gets bigger. Or modifies it in some way. Or just makes it stronger and stronger. And so now this thought form, this desire, has more gravity in your psyche. And there's samskaras we have that have tremendous gravity in our psyche and determine so much of our personality and determine so much of our perspective on life and our experiences in life. And it's at stage 4 where we are watching for these thoughts to come up. So you return to observing the surface level thoughts, and you're waiting for some deeper samskara to surface. And it will usually, the way you know is because there's this thought or memory or feeling that comes up that starts to really draw you into it. It's trying to pull you in to the drama of this thought form. And you catch yourself and you say, whoa, what is this? And you become aware of it. You just become aware of it. And when you start to develop more and more awareness to it and begin to identify, not identify with, but just become aware of what this thought is, when you've become totally aware of what this thought is, then you must delete it. Just totally discard it. Just wipe it off. Like if your mind, your psyche is a blackboard, you're just taking the eraser and just wiping it out. You could only do that though after you've fully illumined it and you've wrapped your awareness around it. So in stage 4, you're just again going back into a passive mode, but with alertness to what might percolate up from the depths of the psyche. And when those things do come, not getting sucked into it, being able to illumine it with your awareness and then let it go. When we can do that successfully, now we're ready for stage 5. Stage 5 is choosing no thoughts. By now, the mind should be tranquil enough, calm enough, relaxed enough that you can choose not to think. Before you could not. Before the thoughts were too habituated to just letting our thoughts run out unchecked. And there hasn't been that mental muscle of higher awareness, of Sakshi Bhav built up yet. So in the beginning, we can't just deny thoughts. Also, there's so much stuff within the psyche that needs to come out. And in the beginning, that's just suppressing it more. If we try to just start off with stage 5, just trying to meditate and not think, which most people do. Most people who haven't been trained in meditation and they say, okay, I'm going to now meditate. This is one thing that I see a lot of times people share with me, the frustrations that they have with dealing with the mind. My mind won't let me meditate because we have this tendency when we're untrained to just think that you can just sit and choose not to think and be totally present and concentrate on the present moment. And when we try to just be 100% present, focus in the present moment and not think, unless we have already prepared the mind, it's nearly impossible. We get glimpses of that, but most of the time we're off in the mind somewhere. So, in stage 5 now, the mind is relaxed enough. You've brought that release of tension on the surface levels, and you've let the deeper psychological repressed items also come up and release themselves completely. Now you can say, I prefer silence over thinking. And as soon as a thought comes up, you can just say, nope. Immediately delete it. Immediately wipe it out. And watch it dissolve back into the screen of the psyche, back into pure consciousness within Chittakash. We're working with Chittakash a lot in Antar Mouna, which is different than other forms that work with Hridayakash, for example, the heart space. Here we're really working with Chittakash, the mental space of the mind, and eventually in stage 5 here, you start to have glimpses of total inner silence, Antar Mouna. Now you can say, nope, any thought that comes up, you just say, I'll get back to you later, and you choose to meditate. And now you start going into dharana. When you're successfully able to remain in no thought states, now you can go into dharana, in which you just focus on your psychic symbol. Your psychic symbol is something that helps you to be able to focus and concentrate and go into those deepest levels of the unconscious mind. Without a psychic symbol, we tend to get dissipated, to just go into unconsciousness, fall asleep, or the mind comes back in. So you need a psychic symbol in order to really give your mind a foundation, a base for concentration, so that you can stay one-pointed and awake as you now start to go into dharana, concentration, developing single-pointedness of mind and balanced intellect, samadhi. How does this correlate to the 3 bodies and the 5 koshas? Stage 1, listening to sounds. Here we are using our sensory organs. Sensory organs is on the physical level. Sound is ultimately vibrations, air molecules, waves of air molecules moving through the air. In space, we can't hear sound. So sound is part of the physical dimension. So this is for the Annamaya kosha and the gross physical body, the Stula Sharir. Next, in stage 2, we are letting all thoughts come up and letting out emotional energy. We're really focusing on just letting up that pent-up surface-level emotional tension and letting that release. This is for Pranamaya kosha, the second kosha. This is also for the first layer of the Sukshma Sharir, the subtle body. The Sukshma Sharir, the subtle body, which is the emotions, the thoughts, and the psyche. And it's the Pranamaya, Manamaya, and Vijnanamaya koshas is the subtle body. In other words, an impression is coming up from the psyche, Vijnanamaya kosha. It's creating thoughts in the mind, Manamaya kosha, and those thoughts are creating emotions, Pranamaya kosha. So these 3, Pranamaya, Manamaya, and Vijnanamaya, are part of the subtle body, the Sukshma Sharir. Some try to say Pranamaya is part of the physical body. They try to say the physical body, the Stula Sharir, is composed of Annamaya kosha and Pranamaya kosha. But if that were true, then show me the emotions of Pranamaya kosha. Show me prana on the physical dimension. You can't do it. This is part of the subtle body of thoughts and emotions and the subconscious. Okay, and that's all being dealt with in stages 2, 3, and 4. 2, 3, and 4, we're dealing with letting off the steam of the mind and the emotions, prodding and poking the depths of the psyche and seeing what comes out of the shadows, and going back to witnessing now what might percolate up from the depths. That's all stage 2, 3, and 4, which correlates to the subtle body, Sukshma Sharir, Pranamaya, Manamaya, and Vijnanamaya koshas. One more. Anandamaya kosha is for stage 5 and 6. So in stage 5, you choose not to think and just observe bliss. Rather than observing any thought, you choose to observe or witness bliss. Bliss, anandam, that correlates to the unconscious mind. When we say anandam, let's be very clear what we're talking about. What is this bliss? This is the bliss of the unconscious, sushupti. Usually, we're asleep for that. So the bliss you experience in deepest sleep, that is anandam. That's what we mean by bliss. And when we go into the depths of meditation, where we've allowed everything in the subconscious to vent itself, or at least enough, we have too much there from all of our past lives, and from this life as well. We have so much on the subconscious mind. We just purge enough during stages 2, 3, and 4, so that there's tranquility there and relaxation on the mind, body, and emotions. And now you can choose not to think. And then is when it's not suppressing at this point, because you've already dealt with a lot of the stuff that needed to be dealt with earlier in stage 5. Now, in stage 5, now you can say no to thoughts without it being suppressing, because this is just the surface level habitual mode of the mind coming in and being like, oh, what time is it? Oh, what do we need to do tonight? Blah, 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 blah. You just say no to that, right? If you're in stage 5 and a deep thought comes up from the psyche that's compelling and is full of emotion, then you should go back to like you're in stage 4. Let it come up. Observe it totally. Don't try to suppress it. And then when it's totally exploded itself and that energy is released, then you can delete it, set it aside, and go back to stage 5 of choosing not to think. And then stage 6 is also for the Anandamaya Koja, because now you're choosing your psychic symbol and you're using that as your base. So you become so absorbed in your psychic symbol, and there's no thoughts there. There's no thoughts, there's just your psychic symbol. And this leads to one-pointedness. So your psychic symbol should be something that appeals to you and is easy to visualize. It should be something that your mind won't get bored with, something that has tremendous meaning to you, such as a Shiva Linga, the Om symbol, or something like this. You can also use a geometrical symbol that is the element of the sign that your moon is in. So you look at your moon. What sign is it in? What is the element of that sign? What is the geometrical symbol that correlates to that element? And you can use that as your psychic symbol as well. And this leads you into dharana. So it's not finished, because we still have more than just the 3 bodies. What about Taraya? There's more than just the 5 koshas. The koshas are just the cave. Within it is that light illuminating it all, and that is you. That's what we have to ultimately arrive to. And it's not an object, it's an experience. It's a transcendental experience that we have to have directly for ourselves. It's useless to even spend too much time talking about it. We can just give hints towards what your aim is, what we're moving towards. And this is where your psychic symbol leads you. So by staying with stage 6, you go from dharana into dhyanam, meditation, and staying with your psychic symbol the whole time. So stage 6 prolongs through from pratyahara to dharana to samadhi. You stay with just stage 6. And to get there, to develop this kind of concentrated presence and to purify the mind and the psyche, takes time. It also requires a lifestyle where you're not bringing in more tension. So if you're really committed to meditation, you might want to consider not exposing yourself as much to very rajasic things like social media and the news every day. Stay aware. Stay aware of world issues, but don't focus on it all the time. Don't give it all of your energy, because it's also putting some samskaras and impressions into you, which you're just going to have to deal with now in your meditation. And then it's like, if you want to empty a bucket, it's really hard to empty a bucket if there's always still fresh water pouring into it. And for this, the yamas and niyamas, the lifestyle components, are very important. living a meditative lifestyle, a blameless lifestyle, a guilt-free lifestyle, a conscious lifestyle, an ethical lifestyle. Not ethics and morality for society's sake, even though that's important, that is dharma. We do have a role to fulfill in society. We're social creatures as human beings. But more importantly than that, being ethical, righteous, and virtuous for your own self, for your own inner peace, for your own quality of life. The reward of a virtuous life is a clear conscience, being guiltless, having less shame or no shame, and being able to sleep well at night and enjoy being alone, being able to enjoy being with yourself anywhere and everywhere you go. This is the result and the reward of a virtuous life. And it's imperative when you're learning a meditation form so that you can start eventually. It'll take months, it'll take years, because you're clearing all the past stuff. But we have to remove the obstacles from the future so that there's not just more and more stuff coming in your life every day. And if you're a person who's very attached to worldliness and you can't quite separate yourself from that rajas, then still meditate, still do this practice, because it'll give you that relief. It'll give you that valve to be able to let off that surface level tension so that it doesn't end up depleting you and leading to nervous breakdown. Well, it's still an important practice to do for everybody. This has been an introduction to Antar Mouna, of which you'll notice there are now 3 Antar Mouna videos on the Tripura Mandala channel for you. Beginners, Intermediate, and Advanced. Beginners is just 24, maybe 23 minutes long. Intermediate is 50 minutes long, and Advanced is an hour long. So of course, I suggest that you start with the beginner's session until you're really able to build up this witness consciousness, Sakshi Bhav. Before you try to do the intermediate or advanced, please spend more time on the beginner's session and also Antar Darshan. Antar Darshan, D-A-R-S-H-A-N. Antar Darshan. I'll put the links in the description here for you. Is an incredibly important practice to just start building up that ability to turn and face your emotions. And just starting with the surface level emotions that are part of your daily life that you're already conscious of, so that we can build up that witness consciousness, that ability to dissociate ourselves from our emotions and feelings. We can develop that strength without going too deep. Because in Antar Mouna, we end up going deep. So start with Antar Darshan and start with Antar Mouna Beginners. And then you'll know you're ready, because when you're able to remain a witness and distance yourself and separate yourself from your thoughts, even during daily life, so when you catch yourself reacting to something and emotions come up, and you're able to have that distance between you, that higher awareness, where you're watching yourself going through this without attachment, from a bipartisan, non-invested perspective, just watching, becoming aware to your habits, becoming aware to what kind of mind you have, how the emotions impact your inner state. The more that you start to become aware of this, it impacts your daily life. And you won't be as reactive. You'll go from subconscious reactiveness to conscious response. And when that starts to happen, then you'll know you're ready for stage 5. When you don't get overwhelmed as much in your daily life, when the emotions don't overwhelm you, now you're ready to go into the intermediate, and we'll stick with the intermediate for a while until your concentrated presence really builds up. And when that concentrated presence is now strong and you're meditating for the whole 50 minutes and you're staying one-pointed and you're not having micro sleeping or lapses in awareness or just not even practicing and the mind is just narrating and going off, when you're not able to do that for a long period of the meditation, the whole 50 minutes of the intermediate meditation, now go to the advanced. And these resources are here for you free. If you would like to learn a systematic approach with 2-hour workshops over the course of 6 weeks, I love teaching this workshop on this meditation form, Antar Mouna. And I invite you to join. And it's about every 6 to 8 weeks is the next class. So if it appeals to you, then I welcome you, and I will see you there. Thank you for joining. Hari Om.